Ever wondered how the Kingsman spy agency got started? Well, too bloody bad, because Matthew Vaughan is going to show you. Remember the First World War? No, not the more marketable popular sequel that had those goose-stepping tosses in it, the one that was in Wonder Woman. Well, chuck on that three-piece suit, report to Voldemort, and storm the trenches in The King's Man. Hello there, you loose units, and welcome back to another episode of Spicy Boy Reviews. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew Iles. Well, we have another Kingsman installment here. It's snuck up behind us. Didn't know this film was coming out, but yeah, let's give it a cheeky look. This installment, like the previous two, was directed by Matthew Vaughan, and of course Matthew Vaughan being known for directing a bunch of other cool shit. Here we go back to the early 1900s. Yes, this is a prequel to show us the inception of the Kingsman Agency and how it all began. I swear they mustn't have been filming any Harry Potter films or any Downton Abbey episodes at the time of making this movie, because every single European actor is in this movie. Our star here is the English patient himself, playing the Duke of Oxford alongside his son, Conrad. These two are obviously the fill-in for the Harry Hart and the Eggsy of the previous two movies. I will say, though, that this is Ralph Fiennes' movie. He is the absolute star of this. And he's going full-blown James Bond in the process. It seems that M has a little bit of James Bond in him after all. And yes, I meant that to sound dirty. It's probably no secret that Ralph Fiennes actually was considered to play James Bond at one time or another. Screw it, every friggin' actor that ever existed was considered to play James Bond. Probably even friggin' Jerry Seinfeld. Now, Eggsy in the first two films did give me the shits, I'll be honest with ya. He just seemed like an obnoxious, annoying chav. But you can't say that he didn't have charisma. Here, however, Conrad, his fill-in, is a bit of a wet blanket, a bit stuffy, and a charismatic black hole. He is uber English. He's more British than John Cleese drinking a cup of tea while invading a third world country. Digimon Hoi Sin also is in this, playing an Alfred type. He's there to train Conrad, as well as having a few spy skills up his sleeve himself. He kicks all kinds of ass. If you're a fan of historical figures and events and playing with them for entertainment value, X-Men First Class, I'm looking at you, then this movie is right up your alley. However, I do think that you need to have an understanding of the events of World War I, where this film was based in, and how it all played out. It's almost like a video game with our heroes fighting different historical bad guys, at different levels of the film. We get appearances of Rasputin here, Lenin, even a young Adolf rocks up for a cheeky cameo. We also get a Spectre-like villain organisation here, full of recognisable actors. It's almost like they're all friends with Matthew Vaughan and they rocked up to set to hang out with him for a couple of weeks and get paid in the process. The film has a much more serious tone than the previous two Kingsman movies. It wasn't sort of over the top and silly. They played it pretty straight, except for the last 45 minutes that goes full-blown action spy that sort of had echoes of the previous two movies. And in that regard, it was a bit of a two-tone movie. It was unpredictable, didn't know where it was kind of going to go. See, I guess it was directed by Matthew Vaughan. He can kind of write his own check and do whatever he wants. He's one of those directors and can get away with it. Much in the same vein as directors like Edgar Wright, Guillermo del Toro, and Peter Jackson. This is much more of a straight-up spy movie, I have to admit. It was much more stuffy and gentlemanlike. But of course, we do get those Kingsman awesome fight scenes. This one seemed a bit more scrappy, though, and believable. They were awesome, fast-paced, and, yeah, sick. It was good that they pulled back on the hardware and didn't have so many silly gadgets like the last two films, like curing death anyone. And whatever they did end up using gadgets-wise, it was much more sort of real-world and believable for the time period that it's set in. There is a real kick-in-the-balls moment in the film that I did not see coming, and I was like, oh, fuck, okay, we're going there. But I guess you could say that's very Matthew Vaughan. We also get a lot of clever transitions. The CGI is pretty damn good. And of course, the costume department is 10 out of 10. It all looked historically accurate and, yeah, 100%. I guess you kind of have to be when everything's sort of based around the best tailor in London. I also love the look of the film as well. It had a lot of dim lighting and sort of a smoky hue, really sort of making the setting that it is around about World War I, and it was kind of believable that way. It's refreshing to see a movie that doesn't look like a wacky comedic filtered nightmare. The film is much more unpredictable, like I said before, and very much more serious in tone. It didn't feel like a massive blockbuster at all, which is weird because the first two films kind of were. Also, and in saying that, I'm not sure who this film is aimed at? Like, what's the target audience? Because, again, it's not really like the first two films at all. It's much more serious. It's based in World War I, which is a setting that I don't think is super marketable, unlike World War II, which is fucking everywhere. They're making those movies left, right, and centre. And like I said before, you kind of have to have an understanding of the historical events of World War I to sort of get your head around it. I will say, though, that there's no wokey woke crap in this movie. It's not sort of force-feeding you some sort of propaganda. There is somewhat of a little bit of an agenda in it, and the agenda is an anti-war one. Using the notion that wars are not won on battlefields, they're won in boardrooms and stealthily behind closed doors. But yeah, look, it's worth a watch. The King's Man, the prequel to the Kingsman previous two films, it's unpredictable. It's interesting, but again, I don't know who it's really aimed at. But in the last 45 minutes, just goes full-blown Kingsman action spy. Guys, write down below what is, if you have a favourite installment of the Kingsman, if you've seen this one, chuck it in there. I don't know, it's based on a comic book, I think, so yeah, that one as well. And of course, if you made it this far into the episode, please give us a thumbs up, because your love and support keeps us going, because we love movies, and yeah, I assume you do as well. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe icon, because we give out episodes weekly, and we'll see you next week for the next review, and until then, stay spooky, kids.